Okay, good evening, and for the first show tonight, I tell you what. Today I've been out, been down the seafront, met a few people. The stroke club I'm involved in, I kind of like I'm the new chairman now for the stroke club. So I've been doing my thing today and meeting people and just sitting by the sea and yeah, and watching the sea go by and then all the boats and everything. So it's been an interesting day for me. Then I came home and I was shattered. Then the next minute I thought, oh gosh, you've got to do about three podcasts tonight. Anyway, please, if you've got any messages on the radio, can you make sure that you get them in quick? Also, if you've got any messages on here, make sure you put them in the right hand column where it says messages. Okay, we have got Warren back again tonight. Hello, Warren. How are you?
I'm good, Steve. Thanks so much. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fantastic. Really good today. Really good. Um, I want I want to follow up where when we were talking about last time about your children's mental
Mhm.
health and what was happening with because that was an interesting story because people were coming in and I had to go through over 200 questions, I think, and people the reply, oh, it was really crazy. And what I want to talk about really is that do you think that our governments are doing enough with mental health system? I sometimes think they're not doing very much to help people who have mental health.
Yeah, yeah. That's a tough one. I can't really speak to the UK situation, but I know in Canada, um, they're kind of halfway there. They're
Right.
trying, but they're not necessarily putting it in the right direction. They're relying on businesses to provide most of the support for mental health through our group insurance and group benefits plans. Um, if I need to go see a psychologist, or in the case of my daughter,
Mm,
we've had to put a lot of money into getting support, counseling, those sorts of things. We actually just completed a what's called a psych educational assessment for her. It's in order to discover whether she has learning disabilities that are contributing to her depression, that sort of thing. So feeling behind because of challenges at school. And that's, it's $2,500. So, that's what, £1,800
mm,
in order to pay to do that. I'm very fortunate that we have the insurance system here to cover that, to help
mm.
us understand it. And we did discover that she does have learning disabilities on top of everything else that she's dealing with. And so we're able to get a lot of that covered. But if not, that's not something that our government is stepping in to do. And
Mm.
it's challenging. It causes lower income families to not be able to address mental health issues because they can't afford to get the help that they need.
So
So
what would happen then? So what would happen then if a low income family over where you are
yeah,
who needs kind of like get assessment for mental health?
yeah,
What happens there? Do
you
they
go to the hospital, right? And they're going to triage it and only deal with truly emergency need situations.
right?
Otherwise, the individual can lean on some of the uh, non-government enterprises, the charities, those sorts of things to get that support. But there's a long wait list for that type of
Yeah,
support.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
weeks to get the type of support that you need, which is not acceptable when you're having a mental health issue.
No,
If
no,
you're
no.
if you're in a suicidal situation, or you're breaking down and not able to work, these low income individuals, they're not able to take the time off work. They generally don't have paid leave or those types of things. And that just puts them in a worse situation because finance is one of the major drivers of mental health issues here in Canada, particularly after this pandemic. So, no, I would agree. I don't think the government has really stepped up to solve this issue or provided the support that's needed for it.
Yeah, yeah. So the trouble is, over here in the UK, they do it different because the procedure is if you have a mental health problem, you
Mhm.
go to the doctor will assess you. Then what you do, then you go to the mental health service and see a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
And then if the psychiatrist thinks that you need to be hospitalized, then you will. But the trouble is, what I always took, because I'm well into mental
Yeah.
health, and the trouble is, what I do not understand is that doctors sometimes can't diagnose you because they don't know what you're going through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't know what's in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, going through the doctor to the psychiatrist, that's great for potentially getting a diagnosis, maybe getting some of the medications that you need, those sorts of things. But you're then not getting the ongoing clinical counseling support that you need. And that's the big thing in Canada is that there's a maintenance aspect that you have to be going through that then costs money to do. It's great if
Right.
you can see the psychiatrist every 3 months to get a refill on your prescription, but what about being able to develop coping mechanisms and being able to address underlying issues through therapy, that kind of stuff? None of that is paid for by government here unless you're going through some sort of charity organization to get it. You have to go and pay for all that stuff yourself, which
The
really can
charity,
put a
sorry,
damage on people's finances.
but the charity organizations, you keep
Yeah.
mentioning that. No, the trouble is, so you're telling me if you got a problem,
Hmm.
right, you go to hospital and if you're really bad case, yeah, you will get help.
Yeah.
But if you bit of a problem, then what you've got to do is got to lean on other charities. Now, but how long do someone have to wait from when they get kind of like, when just, they don't want you into hospital, but you've got to lean onto a charity?
Yeah.
How long have you got to wait? Is it a long wait or?
It depends on where you are. So there's certain areas of the country where they have a lot more support systems built up. So in Vancouver, we have an area called the Downtown East Side, which is an area where there's a large prevalence of individuals with mental health issues, drug addiction, that sort of stuff. It's the poorest neighborhood in all of North America. And so there's a lot of support organizations that have based themselves down there. And so if you're in that area, getting support can be very quick. But I live in a suburb of Vancouver where there's significantly less support. And so with my daughter, one of the organizations that we reached out to when we first started going through these issues told us that there was a 3-week wait list in order for her to get in to see somebody. 3 weeks when you're dealing with somebody who's suicidal is completely unacceptable. Right. So we decided to go the private route and reach out to organizations that could get us in right away. Even then, it was a 1-week wait. Right. And when you've got a situation of potential suicide, you can't sit around and wait for a week for support. And so, it's a very challenging situation with regards to that. And depending on where you are, you may or may not have access to that type of support because it's not in every community.
No. So, and when you kind of like, so if you kind of like, because you got insurance,
Yeah.
and so if you got insurance, and if you go to like hospital and stuff like that, does that actually cover it, or do you have to pay extra money?
So we have a publicly funded healthcare system with regards to medical health. So if I go to the hospital, it's all paid for by taxes, that sort of thing. Unlike the US, where every interaction with any medical professional is going to cost you money, and then you have to apply to your insurance to get it paid back. In Canada, if I go to the hospital or I go see a doctor or anything like that, it's all covered. If I have to go to a psychiatrist and I'm being referred by a doctor, it's covered under our government health plan. But then there are tier 2 type services, so clinical counselors, psychiatry, those sorts of things that are not covered under our medical system, and so you have to pay for them out of pocket. At that point, you would go to apply to your benefits, your workplace benefits, if you have them, or private insurance, and then potentially be covered for that. But it's a little strange in Canada. We're kind of halfway between socialized medicine and privatized medicine.
Right. Okay. See, the trouble is, I'm reading something at the moment on here, and it says here, where is it to? Over 23,000 people in the last 2 years who are suffering with mental health in the USA has missed out on treatment for mental health. 16% of those who actually committed suicide are no longer with us.
Yeah.
For God's sake, what's happening with there should be something in place more than what we got at the moment, no?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the idea that people's mental health isn't considered a high priority and government supported is atrocious. Governments should be putting money towards supporting this and creating the systems to ensure that people aren't left behind for this. To think that somebody can't get regular mental health maintenance because of a financial situation, it's just not acceptable.
It's not acceptable, really, because people do pay taxes, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
They work damn hard to get where they are, and we've got to have a kind of like a system that works, not kind of like it's like looking after the rich. No offense, but it's like looking after the rich and not looking after the poor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the rich can afford the 2-tier medical system or even a privatized medical system like down in the United States. It's the lower income and lower middle income that are the ones that are struggling. That also happens to be the area that is seeing the highest prevalence of mental health issues. And so you've really disenfranchised them and it's keeping them poor or lower middle income because they don't have the support to get through situations where mental health causes them financial harm. If somebody who doesn't have paid leave from work has to take time off to deal with a mental health crisis, they potentially lose their job. They don't have income coming in. They can't pay their rent or mortgage. And then everything collapses from there, which then leads them into a worse mental health situation. And it's this ugly cycle. We need to have systems in place to support people who are going through these types of situations. And even in Canada, it's partway there, but it's not as far as it should be.
Yeah. Have they still got do they still use the mental health system in there? Like the mental health acts.
I mean, we do have mental health acts in Canada in terms of government and social services, those sorts of things, being able to step in situations where they're required. So in the event that if the Mental Health Act deemed that my wife and I were not mentally capable of taking care of our children because of mental health issues, they could use that to step in. But we don't have mental health institutions anymore in terms of the old what you'd see in movies, the padded rooms, that sort of thing. We have private facilities where you can go in the event that you're having a crisis, but we don't have government mandated ones, which is a part of the reason why we have that area in Vancouver called the Downtown East Side, is because when we shut them down, we lost most of the support system that was in place for individuals who had addiction and mental health issues. And so they all wound up on the street in Vancouver. And, that's why we've had such a problem with the opiate crisis in Vancouver, the amount of overdoses we have. because we don't have the systems in place to deal with people who are self-medicating with opiates to deal with their mental health issues. It's very, very scary and disappointing particularly as a parent in dealing with children who have mental health issues. That's one of my biggest concerns, is that they fall into that space where they self-medicate using opiates and wind up having an overdose and passing away. I have family friends from upper middle class or upper class families who have had their kids pass away because of exposure to those drugs, to fentanyl in particular. It's a huge problem here.
I don't think we're educated too on the drugs that we give people too. You know.
I agree.
You know, I think that needs to be looked into too. You know, especially with mental health, mental health is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are very addictive in nature and can have really traumatizing long-term impacts on particularly on children, right? And on adults as well. I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but we certainly have a medical system here that pushes pills as the easiest and most rapid solution to just about any issue, whether that be mental health or physical health. It's the first thing is the prescription comes across the desk.
It's like smoking, isn't it? You know, so you're addicted to one thing, that's it. You know, and I know somebody who's addicted to paracetamol.
Mm-hmm.
You know, soon one paracetamol, they've got to have another one and another one, and they're so addicted to it. And the trouble is that could be dangerous too.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, it creates its own form of mental health issues. Right.
Yeah.
And anybody who has a naturally addictive personality is going to have issues with those in the first place. So
yeah, definitely. What I want to ask you too is this: with the mental health system over there, or the healthcare over where you are, is it totally different than Vancouver than actually like in New York State? You know, where was the healthcare?
Yeah. The Canadian and U.S. healthcare systems are quite different in terms of the support that we get from governments. We would be considered a socialized healthcare system, although I would probably say we're a semi-socialized healthcare system, because there are still a lot of areas that are not covered. So if you needed chiropractic work, physiotherapy, those sorts of things, that's not covered under our healthcare system unless you have privatized insurance.
Right.
Whereas, a surgery, as an example, if I had to go and get angioplasty or I had a heart attack and needed a valve replacement or those sorts of things, all that is covered by our medical system. So we cover a lot of the immediacy. It's a very response-based medical system versus a proactive medical system. We do a lot less to prevent medical issues from happening in the future and more responding to after they've already happened. So we don't walk into the hospital and walk out with a $30,000 bill for having a child like you would in the United States. But at the same time, if there are maintenance issues or you want to be proactive with regards to your health, you are looking towards a privatized medical system in order to address that. So we're kind of halfway between the Scandinavian model and the US model.
Right. Okay. I just don't get the assurance system where you are.
Yeah.
But it beats me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Most Canadians operate under some sort of when they're working for a company, the company will offer them what are called group benefits, and so that's a extended medical program as a part of their compensation, and so that will give them, $250 a year as an example for getting chiropractic or physiotherapy work or seeing a counselor, that sort of thing. In addition, it might include travel insurance, like if they go to the UK or the US and they get sick, that sort of thing. So it's kind of this semi-privatized, semi-socialized system. And it helps to make sure that our taxes aren't too high. I mean, taxes in Canada are higher in relation to the United States, but it's still we're having to support a lot of it, which means our government wants to get people off of things like smoking. So we have more restrictive smoking laws, higher taxes on cigarettes, that sort of thing. They're passing laws on junk food and pop, that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah. See, the trouble is, if you run the government, right, and if you were like the health secretary, or we have a health secretary over here, if you were the health person, what would you change about about mental health? What would you like to see?
I'd love to see more funding going towards subsidized or provided clinical counseling. So psychologist visits, those sorts of things being covered by so each province has its own medical system, being covered by our provincial medical system, so that if I'm dealing for my daughter as an example, she needs to see a counselor every week in order to make sure that she is understanding and learning the skills to be able to deal with her desire to commit suicide. Right.
Wow.
And so I would like to see that being paid for by our provincial medical system, rather than me having to rely on my privatized insurance or paying out of pocket to do it. Because I think there are a lot of people that are avoiding getting the help that they need. One, because there's still a massive stigma on mental health, which has to be removed.
Yeah.
That has to disappear, because it's so prevalent now that I get a lot of people saying to me, they're surprised that I talk about my daughter's mental health situation, right? And they say, I'm really proud of you for doing it. It's great that you're doing it. And it's my way of standing up and saying, this is something that we shouldn't have a negative stigma for. It's something that we should all recognize exists and be willing to address it. And so there's a lot of people that are not going and getting that support because of, one, the stigma, and two, a cost. It's to see a psychologist, it's $150 to $250 an hour. That's a lot for the average individual. The average family in the Lower Mainland, the area that I live in Vancouver, is about $75,000, right, before taxes. So after taxes, they're taking home $55,000 a year, so just under $6,000 a month. If they have 4 $250 sessions a month, that's $1,000. So that's, 18% of their take-home wage is going just to pay for mental health maintenance, right? They've got 50% of their money going towards housing. Like it's an impossibility to be able to fund taking care of yourself from a mental health perspective if you don't have some sort of support from your employer. And that's awful. That should be something that the government is putting money towards.
Yeah, totally agree.
We lose so much productivity from an economic perspective in people not being able to work because of mental health issues and not having the support that they need.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that what they should do is have a mental health. They should have a mental health system in place where they should have the funding in there to supply. You shouldn't take out your own insurance because you've worked for that.
Yeah.
And you're paying enough tax as it is.
Yeah.
So that should be paid for.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the insurance companies wouldn't be happy with that, but I think it's better for the population overall when you have that type of support in place. And even from a tax-based perspective, it's going to increase your tax base because you're going to have more productive people, right? You're not going to have people that are having to take time off of work for mental health issues. Or at least if you do, you should have support systems in place to get them back to work as soon as possible.
Yeah. I totally agree. Thank you very much for your.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. And do not worry about when you talk about your daughter, because at the end of the day, you're not just helping yourself; you're helping other people on here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I hope that I am.
Yeah, you are. You definitely are. I'll see you next week.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much. Thank you.